Hi, Dr. Fripp. It's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. It is truly my pleasure.
I am so excited. This is going to be amazing. So I've
I
already,
think so too. I
yes,
think so.
yes, 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 yes. So I've already introduced you to the audience so they know a
Mhm.
little bit about how awesome you are. But maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born?
Of
What
course.
childhood memories do you have? Who's your biggest role model from childhood and why? Let's get
Hmm.
to know you a little bit.
Okay. So I was born in Ladson, South Carolina. It is a very, very rural place, like farmland. Like I picked the feed for chickens. I fed the chickens. I picked the eggs, that kind of thing. I mean, it was an amazing growing up there because I didn't have the outside influences children have now. So there were no major influences on my life other than my nuclear family because we were protected by having them around us. So I remember mainly going to the beach with my family. We would all pile into this one long Fleetwood Mac my grandfather had. And that's back in the day before kids wore seatbelts. We would just all just pile into the car and we would go to the beach and be there all day. I mean, it was an amazing treat to be around my family.
Mm.
The major childhood memory I have is just feeling safety and comfort in my family. And that's something that I've looked for in every single relationship, every single workplace. Everything is a safety and a comfort because that's truly where I feel I perform and I am my best. My role model growing up, I would have to say, would be my older brother. So we're only 18 months apart. But because we share the same experiences growing up, he was my first friend. He was my protector. I mirrored my behavior after him, though I will say he is very calm and he's very patient. And those are not traits that someone would typically say that I possess. So I don't know that I got everything from him, but I patterned my behavior after him in that he took it all in, digested it, and then would come back with something to say. Whereas I tend to be more reactionary to things.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So maybe his personality kind of balanced yours out,
It
right?
did. It did. It really did. Growing up, people called us, his name is Carlton. So
Mm,
people would call us Carlton and Keisha. It was almost like an Eminem type thing because he
yeah,
was the other side of the same coin.
yeah, I love it.
Yep.
I love
Hey,
it. So, the audience obviously know that you're a trailblazer in plastic surgery. I'd like to ask you what challenges you face, but before that, I think one question I really would like to ask is how did you decide that you wanted to study plastic surgery or become a plastic surgeon?
right. So in medical school, I did have exposure to a plastic surgeon, but it was very brief. My goal was really to do trauma surgery. So I came to Howard University and, we were a level one trauma center when I arrived, and we did a fair share of trauma. At that time, it was truly the knife and gun club is what we called it. So we were very busy, very busy. And I actually lost a 13-year-old. And it was so impactful to me because, and I wrote about it in my book, he had braces. And I know what that commitment is, not just for the child, but for the parent. To when you put braces and you have to go back to the orthodontist every month and you have to make sure the brackets are not broken and you have to change your diet and curve your behavior. And I know the investment they made in him. And when I lost him after two different, what we call code yellows or two different traumas that he experienced at 13, I knew I couldn't do that. I am a take my job home person. And that was so impactful. I couldn't imagine staying in trauma. So I knew I had to do something fast. At the time at Howard, the vice chair, the second in charge, was a plastic surgeon. And so I found myself liking his surgeries, having a natural affinity for what he did and how he did it. And so I threw myself into following him, being on his service, even when I was not on his service, trying to really get the full breadth of what the specialty was, and I fell in love with it.
Mm.
And I really have to say, I think his name is Robert Dennis. He's from Liberia, and I really thank him for opening up himself in his practice to someone like me who I wasn't sure, but it
Mhm.
was okay that I wasn't sure. He was going to allow me to see so that I could make that decision.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It speaks to, there's so many ways we could unpack that. It speaks to the power of mentorship and having
Yes,
someone in your
yes,
corner and
yes.
someone you can look up to and feel safe with, like you
Yep.
said.
Safe. See,
Yeah,
we can be
yeah,
our best selves when we feel safe. I think that's
absolutely.
underestimated. I
Mm,
think that we take for granted that we have the ability to make someone feel comfortable or for
mm.
them to just exhale and be themselves.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
So, talking about safety, I know that as safe as you felt around Dr. Dennis and deciding to become a plastic surgeon, I'm sure as a female African American plastic surgeon, you have faced challenges, and we would love to hear about some of those, how they shaped your career and even your perspective. Talk to us.
Yeah, you're right. I will say though that my greatest challenges as being the first, the only, was really in not knowing what questions to ask because I didn't know how to purchase my first home, what I should say. I didn't know how to ask the right questions when negotiating my first contract. I didn't know what to say when I needed a promotion or deserved a promotion. I didn't know how to say, hey, what about me? Right? Because I was the first person in that space. At times, I felt I was overly grateful when I deserved to be there. Right. Now, I never had the imposter syndrome. I never asked, why am I here? I knew that I'd done the work. I knew that my parents were not the reason why I was there. No one had made a phone call on my behalf. I was truly there because I did the work, but I didn't know what questions to ask. And so I was paid less. I was passed over for promotions, right? And so after that happens a few times, you start to say, wait a minute, now is it the person doing this or is it me? And I take full responsibility for not asking. So
Mm,
I learned to ask the question. Growing up, my grandfather always said the answer is no unless you ask it. But I never really put that to work in my life until probably 4 or 5 years into actively practicing my craft. And so I began to ask the question. I learned how to frame it in a way that was non-threatening because people sometimes are threatened by us even asking. So I would come in a non-threatening manner just to find out, why was I being paid differently from my comrades?
mm,
Why was I not considered for that promotion? Is there still room on that committee for another addition?
mm.
That's the way I would frame it. And
Yeah.
so my greatest challenges, I think, was assuming positive intent. Being from the South, we always assume that people are going to do for us and have good intentions, and they may, but their intentions may not be what mine are. So I
Yeah.
learned how to articulate what my ask is and go ahead and put the question out there.
And that's so helpful. That's so helpful in any
Yep.
field, right? Because I think
It's
that,
very helpful.
yeah, that's going to help a lot of people in the audience. Thanks for clarifying that, for
Of
sharing that
course.
with us.
Of
So,
course.
your journey obviously is remarkable. I'm sure you know it. I'm sure people tell you that your journey is remarkable. Share with us some of your most rewarding moments in your career that have reaffirmed your passion
Mhm.
for helping others through your work and have really solidified your decision to be a plastic surgeon.
I would say my time doing breast reconstruction.
Mhm.
So when I arrived in DC in 2011, at the hospital where I joined, they were not doing breast reconstruction, or breast reconstruction was thought of as a nicety. Only certain people got breast reconstruction, right? It was not offered to all. They would tell women, well, at least you have your grandchildren, or
Wow.
at least you have your second home. You should go on more vacations. And so having grandchildren and having a second home are not the same thing as having a breast, right? They're just,
Yes.
those things are like apples and croutons. They don't have
Right.
anything, right? I mean, both edible, but nobody wants a crouton when they want an apple, right? And vice
Mhm.
versa. And they actually thought of, the surgeons were actually thought of breast reconstruction just like, I'm going to put a bag of water on its chest, and that's going to be something to substitute for a breast. I'm just going to put a breast implant, in that area where there was a breast, and that's going to be sufficient. And that's really not what breast reconstruction is. It is truly trying to recreate a breast. Now, it will never be as the native breast is, because God made us in his own image, right? And so we can't duplicate that even with all the skills we have, but we can come close, and we can definitely give it a try. And we can definitely say more to women than go forward with the rest of your life, because being whole is the life, right?
Yeah.
So my most meaningful time was the 10 years I spent doing breast reconstruction. When I stopped doing it, I did it willingly, because the newest techniques coming out are taught to the newest people coming out of training, right? Not that I can't do it, but the kids coming out now, the younger plastic surgeons are learning modalities that I don't know. And the new kids deserve to do those techniques on people who need it the most.
Right.
And so I graciously gave my space away so that younger plastic surgeons could enter that space. Again, not that older plastic surgeons can't do it. I just did not have the same passions that I had before. But I tell you, that was the most rewarding time of my life, because the patients, when they found out that, you know what, yes, it sucks that you have cancer. Nobody would have raised their hand, agreed to have it. But now that you have it, we have something to look forward to, and that's reconstructing the breast. It was the end bonus once they were cured from the disease.
Yeah, and you said two things that stuck out to me. Just being able to have that empathy and help patients, and I think it's having that female touch,
It
candidly,
is. It is.
it's
Yes,
just
I
having
agree.
that, yeah, understanding what they're going through. But there's something else that you called out that's leading me to my next question. You talked
Okay.
about making room for younger plastic
Yep.
surgeons, right, with the
Yep.
new modalities.
Yep.
And so to that point, which is awesome, by the way, that you're thinking in that way. It's almost like a
Thank you.
legacy, right? Leaving a legacy for the next generation. But as a female, again, African American in a traditionally male dominated field, when you think of plastic surgeons, you immediately think of an old white man, candidly, at least
Yeah.
I do, because I'm not a physician, right? So as a
Yeah.
female African American, what advice would you give in the same vein of giving room for the next generation? What advice would you give to aspiring surgeons, particularly people who may be in the audience listening, thinking, because I have people of all ages in the audience thinking, you know what, I may want to be a surgeon one day.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give to them who face surgeons who will face or who may
Right.
be facing similar barriers to what you have faced in your lifetime? So
It's going to sound very colloquial, but what I say is just do it.
mm,
Nobody can want your dream more than you.
mm,
Nobody can believe in you more than you believe in yourself. You can't give a person aspiration.
mm,
If it truly is what you want to do, just do it. I
mm,
had some incredibly lonely days during my plastic surgery fellowship because I was the new person, right? And while my fellowship chairman, he believed in my dreams. He did. He didn't know me like they knew me at Howard. He didn't know me like they knew me at Meharry. He didn't want the same things they wanted for me at Fisk. I was comfortable in those environments because they knew me and they wanted me to be successful. Now, granted, he would never have accepted me if he didn't want me to be successful, but he didn't have that same, um, feeling of knowledge of who I was. He didn't know me, right? And so I had to tell myself, you know what? In 2 years, you're going to be a plastic surgeon, and they can't take that from you. Nobody can.
mhm,
They can't.
mhm,
So, okay, you don't get the same smiles that you got before, but I got the smiles from the security guard. I got the smiles from the people who cleaned up the operating room. I got the smiles from the front desk clerks. I got the smiles from people who I could relate to. And sometimes you have to relate and get your strength from people who are giving it to you, right? You can't lean into everybody. If people don't know your dream and don't believe in you, that's fine. They don't know you. But
mhm,
those people who see your talent, see your gift, believe in you, you have to lean into them. And
mhm.
but the first thing you have to do is it. Just do it.
Yeah,
Just the
yeah,
people have failed before.
yeah,
Let's say the worst thing that happened was you failed. Guess what? People that failed before,
mhm,
you would not
mhm,
be the first.
mhm.
But
And you will.
nobody can believe in your dream more than you believe in it.
Mm.
Nobody.
That's so, that's so powerful. Nobody can believe in your dream
Nobody.
more than you believe in it. Nobody can want it more than you
Nobody
want
can
it,
want it.
right?
Nobody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nobody.
That's great. That's great. Talk to us about the rise of social media. When you
Oof,
go on Instagram, everybody
oof,
has the BBL, or not
oof,
everybody, but it seems like everybody
oof.
has the
Girl.
BBL and the boob job and all the rest of it. So I'd love to get your perspective, especially as a woman. What are your most significant challenges today with regards to how people just have this image of themselves or want to come in looking like a particular celebrity? How do
Right.
you address some of those challenges?
Well, a few things, it's
Mm.
just, it's always strange to me that in the last year I've done over 400 surgeries, right? But
Wow.
Keisha from Capitol Hill, who had one surgery, is the expert,
Mm.
right? Not the person who trained, right? Not the person who spent endless nights doing this, who knows what a complication looks like. But Keisha from Capitol Hill, who had one surgery, is who you're gonna follow. That's always amazing to me, but it is what it is. And I always say you can fight where you are, or you can see what it is and then maneuver around it. And the way I maneuver around it is when patients come in, they say, "How I want to look like," I'll make this up, Jennifer Lopez. I just reference them back to saying, you don't do anything Jennifer Lopez does except breathe oxygen. That's
Mm.
the only thing you all have in common, because you don't know her genetics. You don't have the financial means to do what she's able to do post surgery. If she had surgery, and we're just making
Mhm.
this up, right?
Mhm.
You're not able to even have the garments that she has, right?
Mm.
So let's not reference her. Let's try to be the best you we can be. Let's
Mm.
do that. Let's focus on that. So I actually go around those questions. I don't tolerate or entertain any questions comparing what I do and what Keisha from Capitol Hill does. I don't. I ask them to make their own decision on who they want to follow, but I
Mm.
don't go back and forth with people on what the street knowledge is. I
Mm.
can't compete with that, because what your cousin's sister's babysitter's mother had is going to be different from what I had training at Howard and Cornell. Those are going to be
Mm.
different fields of knowledge. So I don't get into that. And patients really can see from what I say and the way I deal with them, because I am the surgeon who will hold your hand the entire time. I am.
Mm.
I'm not going to disappear. I'm not going to reference you to go to the emergency room. That's not something that
Mm.
I say. I will meet you in the office. I
Mm.
will come in the next day. I will meet you late. I'll meet you early. Wherever you are and whatever you need, I will hold your hand through the entire process. So
Mm.
if you want this, that's fine. But if you want someone who shows you Photoshop before and after photos, someone who lets you see them operating on other people, someone who is all on the internet, with all these little colloquial catchy terms and wearing personalized scrubs. And if you want that, that's fine
Mm.
too. But
Mhm.
that's not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can't compete with that stuff. You just let that go, because
Mm.
it'll be what it will be, right?
Mm.
I just offer who I am. And the person who has the affinity for me will have the affinity for me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You will
Yeah.
find your people, right? Isn't that so
Absolutely.
true? In
Absolutely.
every field, you will find your
Absolutely.
people. And what I love is that your authenticity, be who you are,
Yes.
and your people will find you, the
Mhm.
real you, right? Not some
Real
fake
me.
version. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Congratulations on your new book. So you wrote a book, and
Thank you.
I just love the premise behind this book, and the title for the audience. And by the way, I'll make it available in the show notes so people can get a copy. You have to get this book. The title, How I Found Personal Success and Happiness When Hard Work Wasn't Enough. That is so powerful. Tell us about the inspiration behind this book. What motivated you to write it?
Yeah, it's so funny because I was terribly unhappy and no one knew. Terribly unhappy, because medicine had changed from the time I started medical school in 1999 and the time I started practicing medicine in 2006. In that 7-year time frame, there were so many things that changed, but I still thought my reward would be exactly what I saw in medical school. That the mentors that I had, I would live that same kind of life. I would have the same reverence by patients. This hospital administration would think of me in the same way. I would be used in the same way. And those things were not true. And I don't blame medicine for changing, because everything changes. But while I had my head down studying, I never looked up to look at the landscape and say, hey, that's good. That's a little different from what you saw. And so I just banked all my happiness on my career as a plastic surgeon. So when I finally finished and I was practicing and I was not getting the rewards, I just started grinding harder. I joined committees at the hospital. I joined medical societies. I was involved in everything you could be involved in, because I knew that happiness was right around the corner. It had to be. So I chased every corner looking for, I don't know if it was rainbows and butterflies that I thought would drop from the sky, but it was a feeling that I thought I would have, and I did not have it. And I will say that one day I had a large mirror in my foyer in my other home, and I walked past the mirror and I thought, who is that? Not because I didn't look like this, but I didn't have the same joie de vivre. I didn't have the same zest that if people know me, I saw a friend today and she said, "You are the same person that I've known since 1992." And that's true because I've always liked who I was. I'm
Mm,
not going to ever be the best of everything, but I like who I am, what I'm doing. And I didn't like that person I saw in the mirror. And
mm,
so I thought, you have to do something different. And my journey to doing something different, to finding the other side of happy, is why I wrote the book, because I knew I wasn't alone.
mm,
Because I talked to different friends and trying to figure out what my unhappiness, where it stemmed from. And they were going through the same things.
mm,
It was a discontentment with medicine because medicine had been changing the whole time.
mm.
And we were still stuck on the medicine we fell in love with,
Yeah,
even in our teenage years.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And as you have this book published now, and I know that there are people, my daughter, for example, read the book and loved it. How do you
Oh,
envision your book contributing to empowering the next generation of
yeah.
female potential surgeons and medical professionals? To your point, right?
Right.
The medicine that you fell in love with had changed. So I'm sure that medicine is going to continue to change. So the medicine that they may fall in love with today may not be the
Right.
same in a few years. So how do you
Right.
envision that book helping them?
Well, that's one of the fundamental reasons why I wrote the book.
Mm,
Is for that type A, the overachiever, the go-getter, the person who says, as soon as I become a lawyer, as soon as I get my MBA, as soon as I graduate from medical school, as soon as I graduate from undergrad, because I'm graduating from, the biggest names, the Harvards,
mhm,
as soon as I graduate, then my life will be just amazing.
mhm,
I want you to stop. I want you to stop. And I really want you to take inventory of where you are and what you think make happiness, and how you define happiness. Just right now, right? Just stop. Not for how you define happiness for your family or how you define happiness based on what you were told. Because I often ask people, who told you that?
mm,
That's my favorite question to ask. Who told you that? Right? So who told you that that would be your happiness? And how do you define that? Let's script that down. Let's write that out. Because if you know that your happiness is not in graduating, though it can be an amazing time, graduation, your family comes, all the gifts, etc. Happiness is a daily thing you have. It really is. And some of it is a choice, some of it is, but it's not all a choice. It is truly the optics,
mm.
right? There's an old song that says, I count it all a joy.
Yes.
And you really have to sit down and say, what is the joy that I have? And every day you have to seek that same thing, right? Because sometimes there'll be events that'll move you off the center. They will, but you got to come back to the center where the joy is.
Mm,
That is the other side of happiness,
mm,
finding out what your joy is. For me, I had been searching in every corner, just going around, I was running myself crazy. And I finally said, Vikisha, let's redefine what your happiness was. And I already had it. So I was fortunate. I already had it. Everything in my life was joyful. Everything.
mm.
We're mothers, so our kids can wear us down. They can wear this little, ooh, my little snowflake sometime can be, ooh, they're a lot. But at the end of the day, it is a joy and a pleasure to be their parent. It is a gift that God has given me to lead them. And when they go too far off, sometimes I have to ask myself, how'd they get that far off?
Mm,
Right? Is it something that you did or did not do? Because if it is, go back to the root of why they're so far off from how you want them to behave, react, and be.
mm,
Right. And
mm,
so I just tell them, because medicine was changing and I wasn't, I went back to see what were the things that could bring me happiness? What were the things that could bring me joy? Taking a true inventory of my life. And that's what I would tell everybody who finds themselves 10 years too late to now now I can't be a singer. I can't be a professional dancer. Girl, these joints won't allow that, right? I don't know that I was the best dancer in the first place, but I clearly couldn't do it now, right? So 10, 15 years too late to change.
mhm,
What can bring you joy and happiness where you are?
mm,
Mhm.
I love that. That is so powerful. That's so powerful. Thank you. Speaking of um your snowflake, I think you referred to your kid as.
Girl. Ooh.
I know, Dr. Fripp, you are busy. You're a
Mm.
mom, you're a published author, you're a successful surgeon, plastic surgeon. So you are busy. It's funny how we say sometimes, I'm too busy for XYZ,
Yeah.
and then I say, well, there are people who are busier than you, and
Yeah.
case in point, Dr. Fripp, right? So how I have no excuse. But to that point, what strategies, I'm sure the audience will want to hear, and I want to hear what strategies you use to maintain a healthy work-life balance, whatever that is, amidst such a demanding lifestyle.
I am unapologetic about taking time for myself.
Hmm.
So I typically craft the last Wednesday in every month as a day that I take off.
I
I
love it.
don't give a person a reason why. I'm
Mm,
unavailable. I'm unavailable for everybody.
mm,
On that last Wednesday is when I don't run errands. I don't make that a CVS day or grocery store day, or I don't. I leave that day completely free. In
mm,
my mind, it is a day where I would be working, so I don't fill it up with things to do.
mm,
And then as the day approaches, then I start to think, what do I need to do for me? Is that a day when I'll go on a long run? Right? Is that a day when I'll get, 10, 15 miles in? Is that what I'll do that day? Is that a day where, because I stand and I work so much, that I'll go and have a massage? And I don't do the same thing every month, or maybe I do. It depends on what my body needs.
mm,
I am also a reader, a logophile, and I craft time every Wednesday for 1 hour between 6:30 and 7:30 for me to read. Now, sometimes because my kids are incredibly active and they're in all these sports, I have to read in the car, but that's
mm,
fine because I
mm,
turn my phone on do not disturb. I lock the door in the car so my kids cannot just run up to the door and start knocking, get in the car and start asking me questions.
mm,
I'll park far away if they're at practice, away from where people can see me, and then I read during that time. If I'm home, my children know not to bother me. I've been doing this so long, they don't have any questions. If the house is burning, just get out. Just don't look for me. Just get outside, right? So they know that this is my time because
mm,
I have to pour back into me.
yeah.
In college, the minister said, we want to all drive the car, but we never check to see if there's gas,
Mm,
right? We want to drive our body, which is this car, but we
mm,
don't get the oil change the car deserves.
mm,
We don't check the tires. We don't allow it just to get a car wash,
mm,
right? We
mm,
don't get a tune up.
mm,
We don't even check to see if we have gas.
mm.
We just keep driving this car, which is our body. I refuse to do that. I
Yeah.
refuse, because I also want my children to see, not only am I their mother, not only am I a surgeon, not only am I a friend, I'm a whole person,
Mm,
that I deserve my time for myself as well.
mm,
And so
yeah.
they then can mirror that when they see mommy is doing mommy's thing,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So I travel without my children. I've
mm,
always done that. When my boys were 2, I went to Cuba for 8 days
mm.
because I have to have time for myself so I can show them the best version of me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Amazing.
No,
Amazing. So there is no excuse for any of us not to do the same,
no.
right?
And
Treat
don't
our
give an
bodies.
excuse to people. Don't,
Yes.
I think as women, we always say no, comma, and then we have a long reason why, right?
Mhm.
Be like, I can't
Mhm.
do it, comma, because I
Mhm.
have to do, no, 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 no. My
Mhm.
answer is no, love.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, no.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I love that. I love that. I'm so excited. Thank you. I love that response. It's still speaking my language. Thank you. So, I one of the last few questions I'd love to
Yeah.
ask you is around diversity and representation in the medical field, particularly in surgery, particularly in plastic surgery. I
Mhm.
actually try to do a search on Google, and you may know this more than I do, like how many African American female plastic surgeons are there in the US? Couldn't find a response.
Right,
Couldn't find a response.
right.
So I'm sure you can relate to this. How do you advocate for greater inclusivity and representation, not just in the medical community, but in your specific field?
Yeah. So, we know you can't be what you don't see. And so
Mm-hmm.
like I run into people all the time. They say, I didn't know there were Black plastic surgeons. Oh, what? Oh, I didn't know we had a Black female plastic surgeon in DC.
Mhm.
I'm like, really? Wow.
Mhm.
So if you don't know that, then how would a young kid know, or
Mhm.
a person in college trying to find their way, a person in medical school, how would you know if you don't see? So what I do, whenever somebody tells me they have an interest in dermatology or plastic surgery, I don't care if it's in DC, it's in Alabama,
Mhm.
I make sure I call a colleague and ask them, can this person shadow you? Can
Mhm.
they be your scribe? Right? Because people want someone to work for them. Basically, that's what it is. But
Yes.
that work in turn gives you exposure. I
Mhm.
don't care what your hue is. If you're doing something and I know you and I know that someone is interested, I ask.
Mhm.
I think we're too scared to ask. We're too
Mhm.
scared to ask the neurosurgeon that we know who operated our grandmother, can
Mhm.
my son follow you for a week? We're too
Mhm.
scared.
Mhm.
We don't ask. And if you don't ask, then you won't get in the door and you won't be able to follow them around to see if that's what you want.
Mhm.
I thought I wanted to be a pathologist at one point, a medical examiner.
Mhm.
Once I started following around the pathologist, I recognized, this is different than what I saw on television. This is not Quincy. This is not Quincy. I'm not cool like Quincy. I will not be able to do this. I was like, right? But I would not
Right.
have known that, right? And the medical
Mhm.
examiner in Nashville was a Caucasian man. But I
Mhm.
went up to him at a conference and said who I was, where I trained, and that I was interested in doing it. And he said, meet me on Monday.
Mhm.
And guess where I was on Monday? Now, by Tuesday, I knew I didn't want to be back there, but I finished up my week with him.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
not something I wanted to do, but I
Mhm.
would not have known. Right. And we're too scared to ask. I remember in medical school, one of my classmates' father was a huge, well known internal medicine doctor at Vanderbilt. And so he asked his dad if we could rotate in his office. His dad said, no, you could
Mhm.
rotate at the whole hospital. I'm
Mhm.
going to ask my colleagues to welcome all the students in who want to rotate,
Mhm.
right? And if
Mhm.
he hadn't asked, we would never been there. But
Yeah.
now that relationship is set because back in 2000, I'm sorry, back in 96, he asked his father, who was a Caucasian male, if his classmates who were non-Caucasian
Mhm.
could come in and follow. And his dad said, not just my office,
Mhm.
but everyone
Mhm.
office in this building you all have
Mhm.
access to.
Mhm. Mhm. As you're talking, a question just occurred to me. So
Okay.
you sound so confident. And what I love just in the short time talking to you, you have a very positive outlook on life. And I know that you haven't had it all just dreamy and peachy, right?
Right.
So I guess the question I have is as people are listening to you, they're probably thinking, well, she was probably just born confident, or she was probably just, had things easy, right?
Ah,
So I guess the question I have for you is how did you develop that because I completely agree. Just ask, and that's so powerful. Just ask.
mhm.
But I'm sure there are people that are thinking, but I'm too scared to ask. Like you said,
Right.
well, what do I do if I'm too scared? What if they say no? How do I build up the confidence? What do I say? What would you
Right.
say to people like that who don't necessarily think they have the confidence
Right.
to just ask?
Right. And I would always say I go back to that. The answer is no. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't ask it,
Mm-hmm.
it truly is no. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I have not always meant, well, I can't say that. I may be one of those people who was foolishly confident, right? So just so you know, growing up, I'm tall. I'm 5'10". I've
Mm-hmm.
always been 5'10". I honestly don't remember being a height shorter than this. So in the third grade or fourth grade, I was 5'10". So I was the tallest person. My hair used to be a brownish, reddish, and my mom put this Jerry curl. So I was a mess. Okay. I mean, I was a mess. I suffered from acne. I mean, I was a mess. Okay. Aesthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was flat on the front, flat on the back. So it wasn't like I had this amazing shape, right? I was just a tall girl, but I knew I was smart.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. And the things that I didn't have, I was okay with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I was okay with that early, because I always believed what is for me is for me. And I think it goes back to my mother is very religious and she really believes and her belief transferred onto her children. And she always said, you cannot be envious of what that person has because you may not be willing to do what they did to get it. Right. So you want that car they have, you want that house, you want that husband, you want that, but you don't know what they did to get that. And you may not be prepared to do it. So run your own race.
Yes.
Run the race that you have ahead of you, and you will fall. You're gonna have, I mean, you'll have scrapes all on your knees. I can't tell you how many times I failed, right? but in failing, I knew I didn't die. See, that's what it was. Yes, I've had some things happen to me that were incredibly painful. Some of them I put in the book, and I couldn't believe I wrote those things. But what I do know is there was always the next day. There was always the next day. And so I believe in the next day. And because I do, I then believe in myself.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. We get the book. If you're listening, get the book. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It'll change your perspective on life. Get the book. Yeah, I can attest to that for sure. For sure, for sure. What other passions, as we start to round up, what other passions and interests can you share with us that may surprise us?
Ooh, okay. I alluded to earlier that I'm a runner. So I've been a long distance runner for over 20 years. It truly is what balances me off because I run alone. So I don't run with people. I always run by myself. So the solitude of running allows me to complete my thoughts. It allows me to let things go. It allows me to forgive myself for things that I feel I've done wrong. And so I am a person who I love to apologize, because if I'm wrong, I want to set the record straight, right? Because I can't be responsible for how you react to it. I just don't want to hold the hot potato, is what I call it.
Yeah.
So running is my thing. Now I'm also a scratch chef. Now I'm not always good, but I love a recipe. I think it's learning how to do something. And so I am a huge chef at home. Now, sometimes these recipes, my kids are like, Mom, that is not it, right? That, don't ever do that again. But but I practice a lot of different recipes, or I tried a lot of different recipes at home, from baking to just regular meat dishes to side dishes. I try to think of things that are outside of what I grew up eating, because I want to have my kids have an expansive palate. And sometimes that starts at home. And I really try to do things that are different and seasonings that are different. And then about, I would say 4 or 5 months ago, I pulled out this electric guitar that I got for Christmas when I was pregnant with my twins, and they're 10 now. So I've had this electric guitar for 11 years, and I finally brought it out of storage, brought it up to the main floor, plugged it in, make sure it still works. So I'm going to start taking lessons now.
Absolutely amazing.
I've always wanted to be in a band. And so my contribution to the band would be the electric guitar. So I'm going to learn.
Can I be part of your band?
Absolutely, girl. We're gonna have outfits. We're gonna have our hair. Oh my God, they couldn't tell us nothing. 2 cute girls like us and smart. Oh,
I love it. I love it. Yes, yes. Pencil me in. I'm right there. I'm right there. This has been so fantastic. Before I let you go, is there anything that you wish I would have asked, or you'd love the audience to know? This is your opportunity. We'd love to hear it.
I thank you for having me. It truly is more of a pleasure for me to be here than it is for you to extend this to me, because
I doubt it.
I have truly, I read your book. I love the way you move. You know, your kids are inspirational to me. My daughter also wants to go to Stanford. You paved the road, and it's great reading how you've done it and how you are a fierce mother, because you have to be. That is truly our job in life. And I love the way you've moved. And you shared those hills and those valleys. So I appreciate you. But what I will say to the listeners is, it's okay to be uncertain.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes.
It is. Because we don't have it all.
Yes.
But when you recognize that there's discontent in your life, truly that you're not happy, that it's okay to stop. I call it to pause and to pivot. It is okay to pause and pivot, because that discontentment, if you don't look at it, if you don't discover what it is, will eat away with you. It'll eat away at who you could be. It'll eat away at all the things you're striving for. And so you have to recognize that feeling is real, and it's okay to have that feeling. It's not okay to ignore it.
Yeah. 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 Fantastic. This has been so awesome. I love it. I'm going to go listen to this again. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Dr. Fripp. It's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My absolute pleasure.